Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing yet another movie review for you all, so hopefully you find this one interesting. This movie is a horror film from Canada, English language, released in the year 2026, directed by Ian Tewison, and this film is called Undertone. So Undertone is about a horror podcast run by a adult female and male. The name of this podcast is Undertone, and it just depicts really creepy stories. And so this main character, we're introduced to her. She lives alone with her dying mother, who's upstairs. This dying mother is bedridden, she can't communicate. And so this woman is trying her best to give her dying mother the most comfort that she possibly can get. But she believes that she's failing her mother. So she has a lot of pressure on her. She can't see her boyfriend. She can't see her friends. And so to escape her reality, she goes onto this podcast. But then one evening, this podcast is sent a mysterious email containing 10 audio clips. Now, each audio clip is as creepy as the other one. And the more they listen to them on this podcast, the more this main character's grip on her sanity begins to slip. So whether or not these audios have something sinister behind them, or in fact the pressure is getting to this woman, is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Undertone. This is a movie that has really split audiences down the middle, and that is the case with a lot of A24 films. So this is another A24 movie, and I really like A24 because they are very different movies. So this has split audiences down the middle, which is the reason why I wanted to go and see it, and I can understand why a lot of people don't like this movie, but for me, I really appreciate it. I actually thought this movie was genuinely scary because it's something a little bit different. In a horror world where it's a very lazy avenue for directors just to have a cash grab, excessive gore, gratuitous nudity, things that are very lazy and easy to do, it's not often that movies like Undertone come along. And now Undertone is an assault on the senses, the sense of hearing. The sound effects in this movie play a very pivotal role, and so if you're not concentrating, you're not going to get the full effect of this movie. But I really like the way that this movie was done. It's a very minimalistic film. You have the main character basically by herself with the dying grandmother and nothing else. And so it does rely on this podcast, and the podcast is a character of its own, because the more this podcast feeds this woman more and more audio clips, the more the situation is starting to get out of control, and you're second guessing yourself. Is there something creepy going on, or is this woman's mentality starting to crumble? And so there's a lot of suspense in this movie, but it's done in a way that's very subtle. It's a very slow burn movie, but then it just gets creepier and creepier and creepier right up into the very creepy ending. So I watched this movie at midnight, and it made me want to turn the lights on, and it's very rare these days that movies do this. The Blair Witch Project did it, the Sinister that did it, and so movies that are genuinely scary and understand what the horror genre is, and I believe that Undertone really understood what that horror genre was. So I thought the acting from the main character was absolutely superb. It was very authentic. Her reactions to certain events, you could sympathise for her cause. She's stopping her life in order to care for someone else, and so you get the sense that she is a good person, but she's a very troubled person. So there are clues as to her life that are fed through, and it does evolve the story in some degree. And so a lot of pressure can actually have a devastating effect on you mentally, but then as each audio clip is shown, you started to think, okay, well maybe there is a sinister presence in this. And so the movie does have very strong visuals towards the end, but it does, as I said, rely on sound effects. It does allow the viewer to use their imagination, and it's giving the viewer the respect as far as their intelligence is concerned, because it's not something that's holding your hand. It's not something that's saying, okay, the monster is there, be very scared. As I said, yes, there are horror aspects in a visual sense, but the majority of it is all what you can hear, and it does paint a picture inside your head. And that picture for me was actually genuinely scary. So that's something I really liked. It is a lower budget horror film, but it's done in a way that was, as I said, very minimalistic and very intelligent, because it doesn't show the budget and the lack of budget, which is something that a lot of other movies don't have, that self-awareness. They try something too extravagant and it takes you completely out of the experience. But this movie kept me in the experience from the first minute to the last minute. So there's a lot of podcasts going around these days, and this is a film that a lot of people can relate to. And for me, as I said, it's just the sound effects and the quality of the sound that I thought really played that pivotal role, is the invisible monster that just really haunts you. And so the end of the movie, as I said, it does hit you on a visual sense, and all that visual base as far as horror is concerned was a reward for putting up with all the hearing base. And so it's a very psychologically challenging film that, if you're willing to give it the opportunity, I definitely feel as though it's going to appeal to you. If you're after a traditional horror film, steer clear. This movie can be a little bit repetitive here and there. There are glimpses of a few negatives in that regard, because it is very difficult to make a feature movie of basically two people in a podcast. But I thought as though it did it very well. It doesn't outlast its welcome. And it definitely showcases the talent of horror directors these days. And so if it sounds like your kind of thing, this is a genuinely scary and spooky horror film. I really, really liked it. As I said, it has divided opinion, so be careful. You might not necessarily like it, and if you didn't like it, please feel free to discuss why. That's what my channel is all about. But for me, I thought it was genuinely scary. More horror films like this need to be made, and as a result of that, I'm going to give Undertone 3.5 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Until next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.